Welcome to the Boaters Podcast. Today we are hanging out with Captain Matt from South Carolina with the Boat Buyer Secret Weapon, and you can see him on YouTube. But to kick off the show, Matt, we want to know, what was your first boat, and more importantly, what was your worst experience with that boat?
Well, my first boat was when I was 5 years old. My family got a 16-foot. It was a Larson Tri-Haul. Had an 85 Merc on the back of it. Old two-stroke with the blue smoke, and it was probably I don't know, 79, and had a bright orange stripe around the top that my parents got when I was a little kid. It was the first boat we ever had, and Dad had never boated before. My uncle had a boat; he kind of got us into it, but we really didn't have any major issues with that one. The biggest thing I remember is going on vacation one year. We had it was a single axle Dilly trailer. I don't know why I remember that, just because it's a goofy name, but I remember the trailer name. We were rolling down the interstate, going to the lake for vacation, which was always our vacation. That was the only vacation my family ever took, was going to a lake or going to the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. And we blew a tire on the interstate. So here's my dad. And my dad's super handy, grew up on the farm, drove big rig for a while, worked, he knew how to do stuff. But here he is with the family, his three kids and his wife in a big, Ford Econoline conversion van, broke down on the interstate with a trailer that can't go anywhere. And I vividly remember that being stuck on the interstate and him like, you guys stay in the van, kind of freaking out, not sure how he's going to get to wherever he was going to get a new tire. Didn't have a spare, which, pro tip, carry a spare, especially if you're going on a long trip. And I vividly remember that. So something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to boating is some of those bad experiences can be on land. So that's the one that jumped out to me.
That's too funny. I think I've been asking that question a couple times now, and it seems like everybody's story definitely changes from being like on the water worst experience or on the land worst experience. And that's definitely, blowing a tire on the interstate doing 65 is not a fun
experience. Yeah. I have another one. This was in our family's second boat, but this was more just a dumb mistake on my part. We were at the Lake of the Ozarks, where we had a bunch of families that would come together and, stay in a resort. Well, I had a girlfriend at the time, so her and I took the boat out, just the two of us, and, cruised around a little bit. We came back, and then the whole group of kids, we were probably 18 to early 20s. We're like, hey, we're going to go to the restaurant on the water. Everybody hops in the boat. We start cruising down, and we run out of gas, probably half a mile from the restaurant, and everybody's eyes just shot to me. They're like, you did this. You took the boat out. We're running it out of gas. And that wasn't the boat's fault. That was on the captain, or the dumb captain, I should say.
Yep.
I've sometimes human error.
Been there, done
that. Having a boat full of 10 kids ready to go to the restaurant and have some drinks, and they're like, you dummy.
Yep. I've been there, done that. When I hear that question, that's one of the ones that pops up for me on my first, one of the worst ones is, I got 8 people in the boat and the gas gauge says half. Like, I'm like, no, and that, nope.
Not happening. It was 100%. My brother was the angriest of all.
Oh yeah.
The older brother looking at the little brother like, what are you doing? You know better than that.
That's too funny. Speaking of first-time boats, so you do help a lot of people buying their first boats and getting into boating like that. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions that a first-time boat buyer might have when they go to buy their first boat?
Well, I think the biggest thing when you're new to the boating world, I just went to the Atlanta Boat Show last weekend. I'm going down to Charleston this weekend. And the biggest thing I hear when I talk to people is they look at a fiberglass boat or a pontoon and they can't see, like, why is this one 100,000 and the one sitting right next to it 150? And they don't understand the difference. It could be as simple as this one's got a 50 horsepower and this one's got a 250. but it looks the same from the top up. Or you look at, you look at a Grady or a Whaler compared to a Trophy or the new Bass Pro Shop Makos. They're like, it's the same boat. I don't understand why there's that big a gap. And it's because, as you and I know, it's so many things below the surface that you can't really see. And if you don't know the questions to ask or the telltale signs of this is the reason. And in my book, I talk about my dad asking the question, not what did they do different, but what's missing? How are they able to build a boat less than why is there so much more? And it's when I talk to folks, it's not that the cheaper boats aren't good. It's just that they're different. The ownership experience is going to be different. They're totally safe. They're going to be fun. You're going to get on the water and have a blast, but the ride may not be as comfortable. You may have some ticky tacky things that fall apart in the first 3 years. 10 years down the line, you may have some extra corrosion on your wiring and some issues that come up then, but you don't think about that when you're new to the boating world.
Hey there, sorry to take you away from the video, but real quick, did you know that on average a boat owner will spend between $1,000 and $5,000 a year just on servicing their engine? And you could actually pocket and save a lot of that money if you would just do the service yourself. It might seem like a daunting task, but I guarantee you virtually everyone can do it with our guidance and the Boaters program. This is just one skill that you could learn inside the program because we have hundreds of other videos teaching you all kinds of boating skills, as well as a weekly live stream where we have questions and answers with me, as well as a chat feature where you can send videos and pictures, ask all kinds of questions, or look for some advice or some guidance on a project that you're doing on your boat. You can join the program by hitting the first link in the description, clicking join, or visiting bornagainboating.com. Now back to the video. Yeah, you might not have thought of the different brands and the construction of the boat and the quality of the products that have been going into that, which is...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a boat. You think of wiring. Like all boats are wired the same. Well, not really. I mean, is it fully tinned? Is it, are you using butt connectors or are you using terminated connectors? What's the quality of that wire? And all those things you're not going to know in the first, in salt water, maybe the first 2-3 years. But 5-10 years down the line, those things are going to start to show themselves. And again, not because it's not safe. It's just that's how they get the price down. And I try to help consumers kind of understand that and then try to get in the category that they feel is right. So for me, if I drive I would say Yukon Denali, then I need to be in the premium level. That's what I'm going to be happy with. But if I drive, I've got a base Silverado. I don't care about all the extras. I just want reliable. Well, maybe that mid tier is good. Or maybe I'm going to run the boat 5 to 10 times a year. My budget's pretty tight, but I'm not handy at all and I want that warranty. Well, then maybe those value brands are a good fit for you, but I want you to know what you're getting and what you're not getting for that price.
100%. Yeah. That's really good. So when you're looking at it like that, then what would be a good question for you to ask a dealer, or when you're going to buy a boat, what are some good questions that you should ask, about the boat
Yeah. So you want to ask a little bit about the construction. One of the things, and sometimes, a sales guy or a salesperson just doesn't know what their product that well, they don't know the competition. They're comparing it to what they knew about a brand from 10 years ago, and maybe things have changed. But you want to ask some things about, what's the warranty like? I prefer, instead of asking the salesperson, ask some people that have owned that boat, a recent model of that boat. So if you're looking new, maybe somebody with a 2022 or 2023, what's your experience? Walk the docks, go to the marina. But you can also, if you're able, it's great at a boat show because usually they'll have service folks there. Ask a technician, ask a service guy what he thinks about the brand, because they're the ones that see the problem. I used to be a salesperson, so I sold boats for 5-6 years. Sold Sea Ray, Harris pontoons, Whaler, Scout, Yamaha jet boats, and my commission was tied to you buying that boat. I was honest and ethical, but I was motivated for you to buy my boat, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, you go talk to the technician in service, and those guys are like, well, let me tell you the real skinny, and I
Hmm.
may not even know as a salesperson that this is something that's been happening on that particular style of boat if they're not active. So that's the person at the dealership. If you can get access to them, ask them some questions about the boats and what they're seeing, in the model that you're looking at,
Hmm.
because they do have some good information, and luckily, most dealerships are honest and ethical, and they really do care about their customers. You probably didn't get in the boating business to become a billionaire.
Yeah.
You got into the boating business because you love boats and you want to help people enjoy the boating lifestyle. Um, but understand their motivation is to sell you one. So I like to kind of go around the corner to get some of the information about the boats I'm looking at.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good tactic that's really valuable because when you think about it, the salesman, like you said, he's trying to sell the boat. So like his goal is to close the deal. He wants to sell it. But when you go to the guy that's been on 20 of those boats and he's worked on, this part on the boat 20 times, he can tell you, oh, well, yeah, it's a great boat, rides great, construction's great, quality's great. But when you buy it, you might want to change XYZ.
Yeah, pay attention to this. If you start experiencing this, address it right away. Then it's no big deal. If you let it go, I mean, I'm sure you've had that conversations hundreds of times with people. If you start experiencing this, then we need to address it. But you're fine until this starts happening, and that's the type of information that a technician has that sometimes a salesperson doesn't. Just that experience and the mentality is different too. The personalities are different, so you get different answers.
Totally. You could probably even use that as a negotiation tactic too, is if XYZ needs to be addressed, like let's say it's a drain hose or whatever. There could be whatever the issue is, you might be able to work that into the deal if go back to your salesman, hey, if I'm gonna buy this boat, I don't want to deal with XYZ. Would you take care of that on my boat before I get it? And then, bring that price down or have the issue resolved before you even take the boat. That's a
Yeah,
really good tactic.
yeah. Anything you can do, like once you write that check, your leverage is gone. But hey, if you have that conversation before you write the check and start signing paperwork, yeah, they want you to have a great experience. Like I said, most dealers are honest and ethical, and they really care. They really want you to have an enjoyable experience. And so if you can just have that conversation beforehand, it really can help you. I think about it of like this. I want you to get the best possible price you can on that boat, but I also want to make sure that your ownership experience, the next 5-10 years that you own that boat, you're like, best decision I ever made. I, versus, hey, I got a great price. This is the best. Oh man, I got a smoking deal. And then a year later, you're like, oh crap. This isn't what I expected at all.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you
So
got all these problems. And they definitely, most dealerships, like you said, they have an incentive to make sure that you're happy with your boat because they want you to, change up the boat 5-10 years from now. Maybe you'll grow into a new phase. Like if you started bass boat fishing and you wanted to move to not fishing anymore, but you move to a pontoon, or vice versa. You got a pontoon boat, but you want to get into bass fishing, and so you'll
yep.
you'll migrate from one boat to another, and they want you to come back to them for that deal.
Yeah, and the boating community in most areas is small,
Oh
so
yeah.
you do me wrong, and it doesn't take long at the sandbar
Hmm.
or at the waterside restaurant for that word to get around the community, or now with Facebook and social media,
Hmm.
for that word to get out that, hey, ABC dealership, kind of stuck it to me. Let me tell you the
Hmm.
story. And they don't really truly don't want that to happen. There's a handful of bad apples out there for sure, and you've got to watch out for them by asking some questions and looking at reviews and talking to past customers. But overall, most of them want good stuff for their customers and keep their reputation in line.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Then on that same note, talking about the dealer and the new boat section, what about, like, what would you say 3 factors between buying a new boat from the dealer or a used boat? I mean, some dealers have used boats, they take them in on trades and sell them. So like from the used to the new department, like what would you say 3 factors would be thinking about on that side of the things?
Yeah, the first one comes down to budget. Sometimes your budget dictates I've got to go pre-owned, right? I've got to go
Mm-hmm.
used boat, and you can see the salesperson coming out at me. It's pre-owned. Like doesn't that sound nicer, Aaron?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Pre-owned with a warranty.
Yeah, yeah. So hey, sometimes it's just budget. Budget dictates I've got 30 grand. All right. And I want a 21-foot center console. Well, you just aren't going to find anything in that price range new. So that
Mm-hmm.
dictates you got to go used. But the other things you want to consider is your budget. How are you going to use the boat, and how much are you going to use the boat? Maybe you have the ability to spend a lot, but you just don't want to because, man, we're going to use it 10, 15 times a year, and we got baseball, but we do want to get on the water. Used is a great way to go where you can buy it. If it doesn't work out, if it's not exactly what you want, and you go to sell it, you're not going to take a big hit
Mm-hmm.
on financial wise, right?
Right, right.
If you're somebody that's like, I'm very risk averse. When I buy something, I have no mechanical skills. I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to deal with it. Well, now the used or the new from a dealer becomes more appealing because, hey, something's not right. I call up my dealer and I say, hey, something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Probably is under warranty unless I did something to break it as a
Yeah,
as a new boater, which
yeah.
which happens. It's one reason why we created the boater boot camp that you can get for free. But there's so many new things when you enter the boating world that hey, you just having that support of a local dealer can be super super valuable. So that would be the other. Now, I personally I can look at a boat and you can do the same thing and be like, this is a good one or this is a bad one, or maybe I need to dive a little deeper to tell. We can
Mm-hmm.
look at those things. It's some of the content I have on the channel, but buying from a private individual can be a great option if you're smart about it. Sometimes you can get a little bit better deal because they have one boat to sell
Yep.
and they just, their motivation may not be financial. Their motivation may just be get rid of it. Their motivation may be, I want it to go to a good home. Like there's some weird emotional stuff that us boaters have to attachment to our boats. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you know what to look for buying from a private individual, it can be a great option. Go to Facebook Marketplace or Boat Trader or just driving around your community, and you can find some amazing boats. But if you're buying from a private individual, you have to really slow down on the inspection process. You have to really look at that boat because assuming that the boat seller is an honest and ethical person, they just may not know some of the things that are wrong with the boat. So you have to be aware of that, and it's on you to find it.
Yeah.
So that's when you look at private sellers, that's kind of what I think about. Could be a great opportunity to get a good deal, but a lot more risk. If I buy a used boat from a dealer, their reputation's on the line. There's some legal precedent of recourse if they sell you a lemon that
Mm-hmm.
you can come back, or they didn't tell you something about the boat that they should have. There's case law that says they're responsible for disclosing any issues with the boat that they know about or should know about.
Yeah.
And so you reduce that risk a little bit if you go used and buy from a dealer. And then you also have the local support and the knowledge and access to their services too, which can be valuable as a new boater.
Yeah, it's a lot less, there's a lot less of a chance that the dealer's going to change their phone number, whereas the private seller might he might go
Yeah.
get, a new Mobile One phone and like, whoa,
Bob, where
now
did you go? I just talked to you last week when I wrote that big check. Where are you now? You said you would answer my call.
yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
too funny. Yeah, that's
a
kind of
little different.
one conversation I was going to get into. You kind of went there already. It was the dealership versus the private seller because yeah, there are a lot of things of buying from a private person from buying from a dealer, because you do have all that support with the dealer and you do have, the warranty, this, that, and the other, but you're also probably going to pay a higher price with the dealer than you are with the private, because the private, like you said, he's only got one boat to sell, and whether he really needs the money or they don't really need the money and they're just trying to get rid of the boat, or whatever the situation may be, you might find yourself a deal. But maybe there's kind of for the first time buyer, going through the dealer route might give you a lot of experiences, because either way, I think something that might be overlooked in a lot of different, doesn't matter what industry you're in, whatever situation might be, but you're going to pay for experiences no matter what it is, whether you pay for education, like from a school or a program or a book, or, you go buy a boat that's a lemon, like you're going to pay for an experience to learn,
Yeah.
an education.
Yeah.
So
Hard knocks can be, trial and error can be expensive in the boating world for sure.
Yeah. So maybe even going for the first time buyer, going through the dealer just to kind of get a bunch of those experiences out of the way and kind of see the process. Like you see the technicians, what they look at, you get the boat survey and you see what the survey, there's probably a really good one. If you do go either the dealer or the private seller, having a survey done on the boat and then being there with the surveyor and being active in that and like asking questions. Cause everybody wants to pick somebody's brain. You always want to find expert and pick their brain, but experts' time are valuable. They don't, not everybody's going to let you just email them out of the blue and sit there and spend 2 hours answering your questions for free. So when you're
Yeah.
paying the surveyor, $5, $6, $7, $8, $1,000 for him to do the survey, you could be there asking all kinds of questions.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about your program, that you have the community you built where they actually have access to ask you some questions and get access from an expert. I think that's awesome. And one of the things I think about when you're looking to buy as a first time boater is, it's kind of, you ever see the picture of the iceberg and there's like this much sticking out and there's that much, below. That's the boating world when you're new to it. Is you think you know some things, and maybe you've watched some of my videos, some of Aaron's videos, and there's a ton of great content out there, but there's nuances. And if I'm looking at a center console outboard that's been in salt water, there's different things to be worried about than if I'm buying a surf boat in Colorado, or, I'm buying a cruiser with a generator and AC and all these systems. So many different things you need to know about where it's been used, how it's been used. Does it have this type of motor or that type? I mean, outboard, inboard, outboard, stern drive, a true inboard V drive, a jet drive. Is it diesel? Each one of those has different things you want to think about. And the dealership selling the boat has that expertise that you can tap into. And then you mentioned the surveyor. If you're buying a more expensive boat, not only a survey, but a mechanical inspection. I find a lot of people don't realize that a survey just covers the structure and the systems of the boat, but not one of the most important things, the engine. So getting compression pulled, checking the fluids, the lower unit fluid as well. Just getting the ECM data. All of that stuff is valuable when ECM is the computer of the engine. I know you know that, but
hey, no, 100%. I love it when people verify like what they're talking, because if you're talking about first time boat buyers or like people that don't know that kind of stuff like that, they don't know, they might not know what that is. So it's always 100%. Clarify all day.
I was like, the ECM, Aaron, you ever heard of it?
They
have. There's on most modern engines since, I don't know, 2007, 8, when they went to fuel injected and more computerized, not carbureted. There's a computer that holds all the data of RPM, any codes that have been thrown, the ranges of hours in each RPM band. And that can be valuable to see, was this engine just trolled for 400 hours and it's got 450 hours on? It was always an idle, or did they run the snot out of it and everything was 5,000 plus RPM, and they really beat it. So those types of things can be helpful to know, and don't. skipping one little thing or missing one little thing can, essentially have the boat be worthless. I had a customer or a subscriber in my community reach out and say, Matt, I wish I would have found you earlier because I bought this boat and I didn't do a sea trial. And when I got the boat home, it was cold, so I didn't do it. I got the boat home, ran it in the spring, and little did I know that it didn't get winterized and it was leaking water. It had a catastrophic issue. And happens every year. Happens every year when people buy a boat and don't do the sea trial, and that's an expensive mistake. It's a tough mistake to take as well.
Yeah, those little things that go from, it's not always just the live well doesn't work and it costs you a couple $100 to change the live well. It's, the engine didn't get winterized and you got a crack in your block and you need a $4,500 repower base essentially. So it's also good that you talk about that, because like also where you're at, like you were saying, the wake boat in Colorado versus the center console in Florida, South Florida, and saltwater, the dealership or the people in that area are going to have the expertise that the other ones are not, because the experiences are going to be completely different. Like, for me, I work on a lot of center consoles, a lot of outboards, stuff like that. We don't see a lot of jet boats and wakeboard boats down here, whereas up in South Carolina, you're going to see a lot more of those inboards, the Regals, the Sea Rays, the the Mastercrafts, the Malibus, all that kind of stuff in the pontoon boats. So the dealership and the mechanic and the technician and the survey and the inspection people in that area are going to have way more experiences with those boat brands, with the engines, the problems that those boats have had, and just all those nuanced things of the location that will happen, opposed to someone 1,000 miles away in their experience.
I'll tell you a story. My brother bought his first boat. Like I said, we grew up. I was 5 years old. He's a couple years older than me. Him and my cousin decided to buy a boat. So they're looking around on Boat Trader and they find this Smoking Deal. And I grew up in Nebraska, so Midwest. Smoking Deal, this boat in Boca Raton, Florida. They're thinking, oh my God, this price it's such a good deal. I love it. They hop in the truck, they negotiate the deal. We're coming down with cash. They drive down, 18 hours to Boca, get on the boat, and they see it, and they're like, it's a little dirtier than I would hoped. But they took it out and they just idled around in the, around by the marina. They didn't even take it out.
And get up
and
on
they
plane.
were so excited. They were so committed by the time they hopped in the truck in Nebraska to end up in Boca. Like that boat could have sank and they still would have bought it. But they got so excited and giddy about buying their first boat that they should have known better. They'd been around boating for, a decade as younger people. They get the boat home and, a couple of things. One, it's got saltwater issue. The wiring is corroded already and the gel coat is trashed and just, damaged. And, they didn't pick up on this, but it had a Volvo drive, a Mercruiser throttle, and a Mercruiser engine. And they got there and they realized in Nebraska, there are no Volvo technicians. So, and so those kind of things didn't even dawn on them can I get this boat serviced? So if I buy a particular brand of motor or style of boat, can I find somebody to work on it in my area?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm a freshwater person and I'm going to saltwater, slow it way down, because as you know, saltwater is so incredibly harsh. I had the guy that helped me put my Confident Coastal Captain training program together, my Confident Coastal Boater. He's like, the only thing saltwater doesn't damage is saltwater. Like everything else, saltwater is just tearing it apart. So us freshwater people have no concept of it. That I heard you say when we were on a podcast last year, like a 10-year-old boat in saltwater is probably on its last leg, no matter how many hours are on the motor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, that's probably right. I didn't even think about it because I'm, most of the time in fresh water. So just be careful, freshwater people. Saltwater is a different world.
Yeah. Yeah. The emotional aspect of buying a boat is definitely a real thing, especially when you put that story into perspective and you think, okay, here's people from Nebraska, right? And all you have is, you've got fields, you got some hills, you got grass, you got corn, you got, woods. And so like, you don't have the ocean. So for you driving to Boca Raton, emotionally, like, so physically you're on a mission to buy a boat and not get
Yes.
ripped off.
Yep.
Emotionally, you're on vacation going to the ocean to do a test drive in the ocean. So like, the
It's an
emotional
adventure,
aspect is
man. I mean,
overwhelming.
come on. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely let's talk about that. The emotional aspect of buying a boat is real, but also if you can step out of that emotional trance that people get in when you're spending money, or you spend 2-3 weeks a month looking at boats and you got 10 grand in the bank burning a hole in your pocket. But what would be some red flags when buying a used boat? Like you get on the boat and you see XYZ, what would be like, no way, I'm, walk away from the deal type stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So number one, if you ask to do a sea trial or a demo and they say no, like that is such a big red flag to me. Unless you're in Minnesota and the lakes are frozen and you just cannot find open water, that would be the only reason. And then my advice would be wait, don't buy that boat now. Nobody else is going to buy it. And if they do, you probably lucked out.
Mm-hmm.
Wait until you can demo it. That's a huge red flag. Actually, looking at the boat, I don't have my big one here, but take a screwdriver with you, the big flathead screwdriver, and you can tap on the hull. You're looking or really listening for this here. We'll tap on this. That sound is a bad sound. It's kind of hollow. It's what you want it to be is like you're hitting glass, like a tink, tink, tink.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to be nice and solid. That's the indication that there's some water has gotten in the transom or anywhere around where there's a hole through the gel coat and the fiberglass. And listening for, is there I don't know how you describe it, a dull thud? Yeah. And that's a major issue that you just are going to have to listen for. But it could be a catastrophic issue with the boat, very expensive, very messy to fix in most cases. And here's the thing is there's so many used boats out there that you can always find another one. Even though you're like, that's a great deal, I love it. There's another boat out there. If there's enough red flags or a big enough red flag, just walk. Don't get too excited. You'll be glad you did. That's number one. A bilge compartment, especially with an inboard that's got like kind of a bathtub ring around it in the engine compartment. Well, that's an indication that at some point the water level rose up, got all the dirt and grease and grime, and then went back down. And how high did it get? Did it soak into the stringers, like which is the structural components of the boat? Did it get, if it's an inboard or a stern drive, did it get high enough to reach any of the components of the engine, the starter maybe, and start having rust issues? So that's another red flag that I would look for. Super, super heavy corrosion on the wiring. Wiring, I would say wiring issues on a used boat could be one of the most frustrating things to deal with. Like, I see you smiling right there. It's like, if you've got wiring issues on a older boat, and it doesn't have to be older, but it can be so hard to pinpoint where the real source of the issue is. And sometimes the answer is you got to rewire the whole dang thing. And I've never done it, but I've seen some videos that you have on it. And I know in your community, you've got some videos on how to actually do it. It's not the easiest job in the world, and you have to have some patience and some skill to do it, know-how as well. So I would say those are three big things. I'm sure I'm missing some. I've got videos on the channel that talk a lot about used boats. In my book, I talk about it, but those are the three big ones that jump out to me right now.
Definitely wiring is, I try to think of things that are going to cost a lot. You know, the boat break out another thousand, like
Yeah.
things that are going to cost you another one. But these days with the prices, it's not just break out another thousand, it's break out another 10,000. So you're kind of like,
Yeah.
whoa, you know, like, oh, rewire the boat, that's 10 grand. Oh, my engine's messed up, that's 10 grand. Oh, the hull's messed up, that's 10 grand. Like, whoa, you know, it's not like, you know, oh, my bilge pump's not working. No, that's $200. Okay, well, it could be big things. So definitely, like you said, the oil line coming up on the sides or the ring around it, that is a really good analogy to say. I think that's definitely, because that's just a visual inspection that you can do, and this is something you don't have to have a trained eye or
Yeah.
really even know what you're looking at. Just know that, oh, that's not right, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's always another one, and you know, you don't owe it just because you go look at a boat. You don't owe it to anybody to buy it. And you know, ask the question, hey, has the boat ever sank? And if they say no, run, because now you know they're lying. You know, whether it sank on the trailer, which, you know, rain got in it and it just accumulated that much, or whether it actually sank underwater at the dock or something. It's, yeah, there's another one out there that you can find.
How would you say someone should go about like figuring out what kind of boat they like? Like, let's say, you know, if you're looking, you want to get on the water, you want to get to boating. How would you go about figuring out, do I want a pontoon boat? Do I want a bass boat? Do I want, like, you know, a center console? What would you give people to kind of figure out what exactly they should be looking at, like the type of boat?
Yeah, so I look at two questions, really three. Is the first one is, what's your perfect day? When you imagine your perfect day on the water, what are you doing, and what's in your head? Like, what's the style of boat in your head if you have that? Use that as a starting point. Number two is, all right, that's great, but what are you going to do 80% of the time? What's
Mm-hmm.
your major use for the boat? I've got it in my head that I want to run to the Bahamas. Like, that's my dream. But 80% of the time, I'm going to be going to restaurants and maybe doing some nearshore fishing. Okay, let's put the Bahamas on hold and let's work with that 80%. And then number three is, what kind of water are you boating in? So if I'm talking offshore fishing, and that's really, I want to go, you know, 10 miles out to this great fishing hole. I went with my buddies. It was a blast. Well, then you have to take a jet boat. You have to take a pontoon. You got to take a, you know, a traditional bow rider. You just have to take those off the table because they're just not suited for that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some videos on that, like what's right, what's wrong. I know you've got some content that would apply to that as well. But then you sort of mash all three of those together. A buddy of mine, I helped buy a boat a couple years ago. He grew up at the coast in Wilmington and now lives here in the Carolinas where it's all fresh water. And he's like, Matt, I want to get a boat. All right, what are you thinking? Well, he grew up with center console, so his mind went to a center console. I said, James, I know that's what you think you want, but that's what you know. But let me tell you what I think based on how I know you're going to use the boat is just a traditional bow rider is going to be a lot more comfortable for
Mm-hmm.
you and for your wife and your kids. And so what he visioned was the center console, but his 80% led him to a bow rider.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good starting place. And then just do some research on the different styles of boat, what they do well, what they don't. And then if you're still struggling, I think this is underused. Is get an idea of what you think is right, and then go rent that boat for a day and do
Mm.
that 80%. You know, you've got Boat Setter, you've got Get My Boat. Most marinas and most areas will rent something. May not be the style you want. That's why I like the Boat Setter and Get My Boat.
Mm-hmm.
But spend $500, go out for 4 hours and test the waters. You know, before you drop 50, 70, 100, 200 grand,
Yeah.
spend $500 and just go see, do we like this? Oh, I thought we could do this, or this wasn't very comfortable, or holy crap, this is it. This is what we want to do. And now, great. Now jump into the boating world because you'll love it. It will become a part of your life probably for the rest of your. Oh my goodness, I'm sweating. I'm getting nervous here with all your audience.
There's not that many people, but
I don't know why I said that, but that just sort of came out. But that it gives you a really good idea. Gives you a really good idea of how you're going to actually enjoy the boat and if you're on the right track before you write the big check.
Yeah, talking about the big check, let's kind of talk about that. You know, I'm going to go against Chris Voss. Something he always said. He's like, I think his book is
Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, Never Split the Difference. Yeah, Chris
Yep.
Voss. So he always says, you know, you never use the F word when negotiating, and that's fair. But how would you go about negotiating a fair price for a boat? You know,
it depends on if you're dealing with a dealer or you're dealing with a private seller. So here's why I say that. If I'm dealing with a dealer, some of the value they bring is in the relationship and their knowledge. So I don't want to beat them up so much that they're like, forget that guy. He's a jerk and we're not going to help him out because that happens. So, but I do want you to get a fair deal. I want you to get a great deal. As a matter of fact, I've got a program called the Magic Money Saving Method on how to negotiate, but I'll give you some of the content there. The first thing you need to know is what's the real market value for that boat. So you can do that by going to it's now JD Powers. They bought them, but it used to be called NADA, which is basically the value book that banks use in the boating world. So you can go online and it's going to give you an average price. So here's what average means is there were a bunch of boats that were more expensive than that, and there were a bunch of boats that were less expensive than that. But if it's average condition, average hours, average use, average options, that's what people are paying. Start there. If the boat's super clean, lower hours, well, then you're probably going to need to be a little bit more. If the boat is a project boat, it needs some work and it's rough, I probably would walk away from it, right? Unless you're a project boat guy, then that you shouldn't worry about the less unless you know that's what you're after. So you're probably going to pay a little bit more than average price, but I'm going to try to get the average price. Like if I can get it at average, I did really, really, really well. And it's most of the times they price it. And if you subscribe and pay JD Powers thousands of dollars a year, you get the high retail price, like what the top boats are selling for in top condition. It's usually 10, 15, maybe 20% more depending on the age of the boat. The less expensive the boat, the more it's like 20% because there's a bigger gap from a newer boat. So I'm looking at that. I'm going to Boat Trader and I'm looking, what are boats listed at that are like this? Keep in mind, trailers add thousands of dollars to the value. Horsepower difference between, a 200 and a 270 or 250 could be a couple $1,000s. Electronics, T-tops, wake towers, those can be big needle movers. But when you're building out in JD Powers, you can add options. Like don't add stereo, don't add canvas cover. The average boat has all that stuff. So don't double dip and bring that price up unnecessarily. And so I'm using that as a guide. And if I'm making an offer, I'm going to probably offer something slightly less than average because I don't want them to accept my first offer, but I also don't want to be insulting where they're like, forget it. You're not serious about buying it. It's listed at 50,000, average retails 40, let's say 42. If you come in at 30, they're going to be like, you're not even serious. I'm not continuing this conversation. But if I come in at 40, now it's like, I'm not insulted, but I'm like, no, I don't think so. But you can start the conversation.
Right.
The question I really like is, and I don't know if Chris teaches this, but it's something better. It's something along those lines is, hey, can you do any better? Can you do any better than that? And just see what they say. A lot of times they'll say, well, yeah, I can. Because when you list a boat, you're like, this is when you're doing, if you've ever done this before, selling a car or selling something on Facebook Marketplace, you're sitting there thinking, well, I would take this for it, but I would really like this.
Yep.
But I see one that's listed at that. And so you list it way higher than what you would actually take. And there's usually some room there. So you start off low, you let them come back and forth. Hey, is that the best you can do? And typically that's going to get you another concession, but it's real friendly. It's real nice. It's real easy.
Mm-hmm.
And that can work real well. Another one that works well is, they come back and they say 45 and you want it at 42. Like, how am I supposed to do that? I think that's directly from
that's Chris Voss for sure.
Yeah. How am I supposed to do that? And just like, it's amazing how well it works. I get emails all the time from buyers that say, I use your method, and they just right out of the gate knock $2,500 off. Like, I don't know why it's always $2,500, but that seems to be a pretty consistent number that that they drop. And again, if it's with a dealer, I want to keep it friendly. I want to keep that relationship. If it's with a private individual, they've got one boat and there's no reason to be fair. It's kind of a winner takes all situation.
Yeah.
And so it's just be aggressive as you can. But the key is, I would rather pay an extra $1,000 and get the right boat that's in good condition, that doesn't have any issues that I'm not aware of, and I know exactly what I'm buying.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, every boat has issues. So just know that within the next year, you're going to have to spend $1,000 to a couple $1,000s on something that you just have to. Like, you would never found it. It wasn't broken at the time, but it's on its way to failure. So just budget that in if you're buying a used boat, that something, I don't know what, and I made sure it wasn't a big thing, but something's going to happen that I'm going to have to address, and be ready for it because it's coming.
Yeah, there's wear and tear items on everything. I mean, the batteries are going to need to be replaced at some time. There's a couple $100 for each battery. The trailers need constant work, whether that's trailer lights, the leaf springs, the hubs, the tires, the winches, the jacks, like all that stuff. The canvases wear out. You got to put a new canvas on there. The seat cushions go out. You got new upholstery. Like, there's always going to be a live well pump goes bad. The bilge pump goes bad. Your nav light goes, like, there's always wear and tear items. So every year, be conscious that at some, well, I 4 years ago I did my boat battery, so it's pretty close to. I'm going to need to throw another $500-600 in my batteries in this boat, depending on how many you got. So definitely that. See, I didn't realize that. I was going to ask you about the NADA like guidelines, and is there that for the boating world? And so I get, JD Power is the place to go to kind of figure that out, because between that and Boat Trader and boats.com and Facebook Marketplace, once you pick out the type of boat that you want, or the style or whatever, you go rent the boat, you like, I want this boat. Now you can start your shopping experience of like, I want the 2016 to 2020 21-foot XYZ boat with this much power on it. Now you can look at them, and now all of a sudden you've got, here's all the options out there. And as you watch that market, you'll kind of get a gain of like, well, with these amenities, they go for this, these amenities, they go for this one's going to go quick. And as soon as you see that deal, you already know what makes it a deal. And now you can get the actual, let's not call it the dream boat, but like the boat you are going to be the most happy with. You're going to be able to get that because you've got it. You did all the work, which that work that you put in now, and to get that fair deal is now going to give you years of joy and experience, as opposed to years of the headaches and aches and pains and $10,000 every year.
Yeah. Cause the wrong decision, even at the best price, like I'm sure you've heard it said, like the most expensive boat you can get is a free boat.
Oh yeah.
A free boat is like, it's got issues, but you have no idea how major the issues are, and how much it costs to fix things if you can't do it yourself. Even if you can do it yourself, some of the stuff is crazy expensive. But if you have to hire labor, I mean, I don't know what labor rates are down there, but around here, $150 to $200 an hour for work on your boat. a major project that adds up awfully quick. And I know up in Seattle, I know down in Florida, it can be even more expensive than that.
Oh yeah, we're 175 to 250, and some places could be a little bit more depending on
Yeah.
your boat, what needs done, like what is,
Yeah.
do you have this engine on this boat and it's a special engine that needs a special technician to work on it? That is now becoming a thing where, you've got special $250 an hour technicians to work on stuff, and they could
Yep,
definitely
for sure.
definitely pop up there. Staying on this whole topic though of the prices and stuff, something that we have it down here, but it's a little bit different than what you have. But how do seasons come into play when you're talking about the price of the boat? Like, the price of X boat in December versus the price of X boat in July.
Yep. So you've got the normal depreciation curve that is a boat's always losing value. But within that, you've got kind of an up and down as you're going down.
Mm-hmm.
So the best time to buy a boat price wise is going to be in the winter and boat show season, which is kind of, we're in boat show season right now, January to March. Your boat show is probably around that time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're buying new, the boat show season applies because manufacturers put incentives on the boats. The dealers are just coming out of the winter hibernation where not much has happened, especially in the northern climates. And they're like, hey, we need some cash flow and we just need to get rid of this boat because it's probably a leftover model year. And they're more motivated to sell it.
Yeah.
On the used boat side, if you look at the trends, and I do a market update every about 3 months, and I look at Google Trends on the search term boats for sale.
Mm.
And it's like this. It's January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So that's the interest level. So if you're looking to get the best deal, it's in those kind of shoulder areas where you're January to before your boat show. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually when it kicks off in your local area. And then after 4th of July, but probably after Labor Day in most areas, it's a good time to do it. And as you get into right before winterization, people have to pay storage for the winter. They've got to shrink wrap their boats. They've got to winterize them. They've got to pay for storage. And so some people after Labor Day, they're like, I'm ready to sell it. Can be a great time to buy because the season's over. Whoever buys that boat doesn't get to go out and use it for the next 6 months. They got to wait till it warms up again. So the demand is lower, but there's a lot of supply that comes on the marketplace because they don't want to pay those extra expenses. And that could be $2,000. And so you can negotiate, well, I'll just wait until March when the weather warms up.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, let's talk. I've got to write these checks for a boat I don't want anymore. And it could be a great time to buy it financially. But then there's also the aspect of when's the right time to buy the boat when you're ready to buy the boat. So you may pay a couple extra $1,000 more for the boat, but if your kids are, my girls are 11 and 13, if we miss a boating season, that's 1 year closer to them leaving the house and going off to do whatever their adult life is.
Yeah.
And so I don't want people to get so hung up on the money that they forget about why they're really buying a boat.
Right.
Because you don't need it. It's not a financial investment.
Mm-mm.
It's an investment in relationships and family and memories and fun and your success. You work hard. And if boating is something that appeals to you, don't wait another year to save a little bit of money. Find the right boat. Make sure it's a good quality boat and fits what you want to do. And make sure it fits your budget. But understand the real reason you're buying a boat is for all the relationship stuff and family stuff and memories, and you're not buying a boat to save money, because I promise you that's not happening. That is not happening.
Yeah, no, that's something I think gets overlooked because boating is expensive, that people will get hung up on the financial aspect of it, and then all of a sudden you lose the time and experience value and the purpose of why you're buying the boat because you got so caught up in, I don't want to get caught. I don't want to lose a bunch of money, but you're with a boat, you're not losing money. You're paying for experience and entertainment, basically. I mean, it's just like, what you pay for your boat is the same thing as what you pay for Netflix to entertain you and watch movies. It's just like what you pay for a vacation. You pay money to go on, to the Bahamas to do this vacation. You save all this money up, then you spend it all for a week at Sandals in the Bahamas. And like that experience is what you paid for. Well, with the boat, that's the same thing. You're paying to have these experiences and these times. And like you said, with your daughters, you've got this window of, once they're, how everybody's different, obviously, your kids get in different phases, but like, especially once you get to 18, 19, college and out, like all of a sudden, like they're off and doing their own thing. They don't want to hang out with dad at the lake no more, like, so like you've only got this many summers to have those experiences
Yeah,
before.
and, this summer, my oldest brought a bunch of her school friends. She had a math class that they got really tight and have since fifth grade. Now they're in eighth grade, have all stayed together and really close friends. So we had, I think, 8 kids out on the boat, my wife and my youngest and myself. And we went out tubing and wakeboarding and going to the sandbar and just, eating sandwiches on the boat
Mhm.
and had a ball. And my daughter, who doesn't want me to wave at her when she's cheering at the
Yeah,
basketball game in middle
yeah.
school, invited all of her friends to spend the day with mom and dad and her little sister, who couldn't be more annoying in her book. And that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the boat. And it was
Yeah.
such a fun day.
Mhm.
And those are things that, eventually she's going to be off doing her own thing, and I'm not going to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And to me, that's worth more than
Yeah.
the
Everything you paid for the boat. Like
the
it's,
yeah, yeah. It's a lot. It's valuable. It's valuable to me
mhm.
to spend that time with my kids and their friends. So
Yeah, that's why I brought that up. Or well, you brought it up, but I kind of extended on it because people do lose that sight getting caught up in it because boats are expensive. So, don't ever lose that sight because you get caught up in the emotional, roller coaster of buying it and spending the money and saving the money and all that kind of stuff. So don't lose sight of that whole reason. But let's move on to, we'll talk about one more thing before we close out today. So you're in this whole boat. This whole episode's been about buying a boat and first time boat buyers, stuff like that. So when you're at the end stage, you get all the way to the sea trial. What is something that you're looking at, or the things you're looking at or paying attention to on that sea trial to kind of like really seal the deal on getting the boat?
yeah. So a couple of things you want to do is you want to listen and feel. Like, inherently, we've been on boats enough that we can sense things that are off just by listening and feeling. And so as a new boater, you may not have that sense, but you can kind of tell when something doesn't sound right or feel right. So really focus on those senses. When you get to the boat, crank it up and listen. Like, just don't turn the stereo on. Don't be jibber jabbering. Be like, all right, quiet. Let me crank it up and listen. How does it crank up? Does it spit and sputter? Is there a grinding sound? Is there something that doesn't sound quite right? So you want to listen to that. Do the same thing at idle. As you're idling out through the no wake zone, does it sound nice and smooth? Does it? And you can. I've always thought this would be a fun video. I haven't put it together, but recording sounds of engines. Like, this is what a Yamaha should sound like. This is what the Mercury Pro XS should sound like. This is what a stern drive should sound like. So that people that don't know can listen and be like, okay, that sounds good. And then the same thing, going from idle speed, just a little bit of forward momentum, to full throttle. How does it, is it jerking, or is it nice and smooth? Is it
Mm-hmm.
spitting and sputtering? Is there anything odd that happens there? And then, at full throttle for 60 seconds. You don't want to run full throttle for an hour, but a little bit of time, 60 seconds, 2 minutes at full throttle is okay. It's okay. Trim it up and down. How does that impact how the boat handles? Then get it set right. Ask if you're not a competent boat driver. You can ask the owner to do this and just ask him to run through the maneuvers. You can also get trained on how to operate the boat, which I really, really encourage.
Oh yeah.
But get it set at, I say, 3/4 throttle, maybe half throttle, trimmed up in about the right position if it has trim, and do some turns. How does it feel in the turns? Is it sliding up on you? Does it feel like it's going to skip out, or does it just nice bank like you would hope it would? Do those maneuvers so that, again, you're listening and you're feeling what's the boat doing. That's going to be the big thing. And if you do cold start, idle, acceleration, full throttle, and then like normal cruising, those are the things that you're mainly going to be doing. And don't do it over a 5-minute span. Try to spend 20, 30 minutes out there, because a motor that is iffy can run good for a while. But at some point, like 30-minute mark is usually when you start seeing if something's going to happen, it's going to happen there. If it goes 45 minutes and it's smooth, you're probably in pretty good shape, assuming you did all the other inspections we talked about, the mechanical compression check, pulling the engine hours, checking the fluids, all that looks good. Come back. Oh, and by the way, I like to hit some chop. I like to do some figure eights and then cut through it. How does it feel like it's going to fall apart, or does it feel solid under your feet? That kind of feel.
Yeah.
That's how I go through it. Come back to the dock, get it tied up, and then check the fluids again. Did anything change? Is there discoloration? Is there water somewhere where there wasn't water before? Those are the things you're looking for. And I've actually, if you're newer to boating, I've got a free Boat Buyers toolkit, and it's got a full demo checklist in it, along with a lot of the stuff we talked about, questions to ask, how to inspect the boat, just so that you can take that with you and avoid that giddy excitement of, oh, this, I love it. It looks so shiny. It's great looking. You miss something. Well, this will keep you on track and just, all right, we did that. Red flags, notate them. And so you're making a smart decision for you and your family. You can see the shirt I got, Life is Better on the Boat. If you truly get the right boat, it's so much fun, and it just becomes part of you. But if you buy the wrong boat, I've got another T-shirt that says "Break out another 1,000," or the best day of your life is the day you buy and the day you sell. That's true if you buy the wrong boat.
Yeah.
But if you buy the right boat, then this is the shirt that I think applies for 90% of the people that get into boating.
Well, this has been great, Captain Matt. I really appreciate you coming on. Anybody that wants to get any information on him, you can check him out at Boat Buyers Secret Weapon there on YouTube. Other than that, you guys have a great week. See you later.